Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're going to talk about how the engineering sector can support the new Labour government's ambition to roll out infrastructure investment at pace and drive growth back into the UK economy. There can be no doubt about the new government's infrastructure ambitions following the recent King's speech, which unequivocally placed investment in the nation's energy, transport, water and communication infrastructure at the heart of economic growth. But how will this ambition be translated into reality? How will the industry need to change to ensure that we maximise the outcomes from every hard-earned pound of public and private cash? Cash that, of course, is far from abundant. Well, without question, the industry has to change, and in particular, the traditional role of design-focused businesses must evolve to meet the new demands of infrastructure clients and, of course, the businesses and public that they serve. So to help me with this challenge and to explain a bit more about what's going on in the industry, my guest today is Alex Gilbert, Managing Director of AMI Consulting, the design and problem-solving wing of infrastructure service provider AMI, which, now freed from the shackles of its long-term owner Ferrovial, is now reshaping its strategy under a culture of new private equity ownership. Alex has his hands full as he attempts to leverage the firm's traditional engineering and design skills and add in a raft of new talents, ideas, technologies to help generate not just greater efficiency for the infrastructure investment, but meet this new challenge of fundamentally shifting the quality and the value of outcomes that this investment achieves. So let's find out more. Alex, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Good morning, Anthony. Good to be here.
Well, Alex, as I mentioned, the Labour Party has swept to power under Keir Starmer and set out a rake of really lofty ambitions in the recent King's speech to turn around UK living standards on the back of greater economic growth. Infrastructure investment is at the heart of this ambition. Are you excited about the next 5 years?
Absolutely, Anthony. Very excited about it. As a strategic service provider to UK government, we're looking forward to continuing to build our long-standing relationship with them. We very much welcome the government's strong focus on infrastructure investment because, strong infrastructure investment is key to a more resilient and thriving economy, as has been shown over the previous years. We want to see that positive improvement in transportation, in energy transition as well. And obviously, we need to talk about infrastructure resilience and urban development as well. And I think we can play a pivotal role in supporting the government and improving the living standards for the public and the electorate.
Well, huge challenges, Alex. Huge challenges, but not least because, as we're going to hear a lot more about over the next week, 2 weeks, months, the public coffers, there's not a lot of spare cash knocking around. So what do you think the new government has to do to turn this ambition for new investment in energy, transport, housing, communities, from ambition into the much needed reality?
Okay, well, Anthony, I think as with any government, they need to have a few things in place. And I think Sir Keir Starmer and his team have thought extensively about that. And I think we've seen that through the King's speech, 40 bills being brought forward. I think their document from early February, setting out their 5 missions, it demonstrates the thinking that's gone behind that. But for me, I think there's 5 key things that we need to have in place. First is a clear strategic vision for policies. These have to be tangible and it has to be a comprehensive infrastructure plan for us. Streamlining regulations, I think they've got to simplify the planning and regulatory process, and that's to speed up infrastructure projects and other projects. And we've already seen quite a lot about that already in the first few days of the new government. Absolutely, going back to your point about investment, I think there has to be a real strengthening of that public-private partnership, encourage that greater collaboration, that the private sector companies can bring that unparalleled expertise and further access to cash to be able to support that infrastructure plan. And of course, as we go through the energy transition and the decarbonisation agenda, then we've got to build that green skills capability in the UK. And again, we've heard that really spoken about by the new government. And that's about developing the training, the education, and that focus on those critical skills that they remain in the UK. And we're able then to deliver the energy transition and net zero plan the government wants. And finally, I think, a commitment from business will be there if the investment in long-term projects is there for a government. So again, going back to that first point, setting out these clear policies, having that plan and that long-term view, I think allows that sustainable funding from businesses to be able to be brought to the party.
And I think that absolutely echoes the points made by Alistair Reisner last week on the podcast, where he talked about this need for consistency and clarity, which you've been calling out for probably decades, haven't you? I mean, you're involved in transport, you're involved in education, you're involved in many social projects. I mean, and also you're getting involved in energy. I mean, it's early days yet, but where are you hoping, or where are you thinking that the investment is going to start flowing through first into your business?
Well, look, where I'd like it to come is probably in three key areas. The first is in transport infrastructure. Invest in new projects to be able to improve that social connectivity and the economic growth in the country. So, we're seeing the Northern Powerhouse Rail project come out to tender, and that is a long-term plan for the improvement of rail services and rail infrastructure in the north. Absolutely key. That would be a superb start, to progress with that. I think then we've got to look at the infrastructure that we have, how that's maintained and how that's upgraded, address critical infrastructure deficits, strengthen the resilience of our aging infrastructure, such as roads and bridges. And I think National Highways' RIS3 program absolutely supports that, is focused on that, so early approval of that, and let's progress into RIS3 with that. And then finally, it's the renewable energy projects. So how can we invest in that transition and decarbonisation initiatives? So the electrification of rail, new sustainable energy infrastructure to be able to support, for example, EV charging, as we need to roll that out across the country. That's a critical. So it's those three areas for me, Anthony.
And they're all linked up in many ways, all bound in together. But because, of course, in the King's speech, there was no real mention of what's going to happen with the roads investment strategy. We heard a lot about rail, we heard a lot about energy, but not specifically about roads. Are you hearing anything?
Not at the moment. Look, it's really early days. I think, National Highways and the other organisations need to liaise with government. The government has to come in, make clear its five missions, understand the current situation, and then be able to take that. So I think, by early September, October, we'll be starting to hear a lot more after summer recess.
Yeah, and of course, this new focus away from levelling up towards local government presumably underpins that kind of that need to really support local authorities in their investment in transport infrastructure.
Absolutely, and I think you can see that in the discussions around, the importance of bus networks and understanding the priority there and what's going to happen on that.
Yeah. Talk a bit about Amy before we crack on a bit more about general investment, because the business was bought from Ferrovial, as I said at the top, by Buckthorn Partners just over a year ago, after many years of being somewhat in limbo. What does this new ownership structure enable you to do as a business now?
Okay. So we've been bought by a joint venture, if you like, of PE between unequivocally partners from America and Buckthorn from the UK. Look, since the acquisition, the business has been able to absolutely refocus on growth across our core markets, consulting, complex facilities and transport infrastructure. And the new owners have committed to investing in Amy to be able to strengthen us as an organisation. And that allows us to grow. It allows us to provide access to new opportunities. And of course, they have a very strong agenda around energy transition. And I think that ties in neatly with the aspirations of where we wanted to go as a business and being able to forge ahead. We can capitalise on new design. We can provide and maintain infrastructure that fit as we go forward, to deal with climate resilience. And utilise the gains that we can bring into the design and decarbonisation of infrastructure to be able to help with that net zero journey. With the support of our new shareholders, we're in an excellent position to be able to leverage those opportunities that I think the UK government need. It gives us access to that 600 billion that's been committed to infrastructure spending, across the period. And I think we can really support the government now in that energy transition journey to achieve net zero. So I'm like I said at the start, I'm quite excited about it all.
Well, exciting times, Alex, but I'm sure there's some new challenges and pressures that come with this new environment. I mean, talk us about that. I mean, have you got like a timeline from which you need to deliver by? I mean, what kind of pressures come with it?
No, look. In AMI, we've always had a strategic plan, which is a 5-year look ahead, and our new owners absolutely back that plan. So I don't think there's pressures, I wouldn't call it. There's obviously challenges just in the day to day and going and securing work, understanding the relationships with clients, being able to then deliver on that. But no, I'm quite excited. They're backing our plan to go deliver. So I've got to go and do that now. So I don't really see it as pressure or challenge. It's just the job, Anthony.
Brilliant. No, well, so you've got certainty of investment for the future coming from your bosses. You've got certainty of strategy going forward in terms of your clients. So how does that help you as a leader? I know you've always been kind of focused on global and world domination, Alex, as an individual. But how does that help you as a leader?
Well, look, a bit like the government giving us that long-term commitment. So having, owners that have that long-term commitment allows us to invest. So being able to develop the skills, being able to push into new markets, being able to push into new geographies. And that allows me now to go and implement those plans with the certainty of support and investment to go do that. And that is vital as a leader.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about investment opportunities, public investment opportunities in the UK, but are you thinking just UK now? Because you've got US investment in there. You've got a lot of money being invested in the US. You've got a lot of money being invested in infrastructure all around the world. Is it a global project for consulting?
It is, yes, we are UK focused at the moment, but previously, we had overseas businesses in Australia, North America, the Middle East. So, absolutely, it's my aspiration to go back to those territories, look at those territories where they have aging infrastructure, the same issues that we have in the UK, and to be able to take our world leading capability into those geographies and support those clients in that journey. And I think, the decarbonisation, element to be able to bring that to new asset management, I think is a key differentiator for us as AMI.
Good. And well, let's just explain a little bit more about, I suppose, the structure of AMI, which has been changing because you run the consulting business, but AMI's got a new business structure. It's got its transport infrastructure business. It's got its complex facilities business looking after and managing properties such as schools and prisons. And then there's your domain, I say, which is the consulting, which is, I mean, am I right in thinking of it maybe as the glue holding it all together at the heart of the business? I mean, how do you see it?
Look, I look at AMI as one organisation. Yes, we're structured in 3 business units, but that's for that's to allow us to run the business day to day. I work very closely with the transport infrastructure business on those integrated contracts. Since the acquisition, I'm now working really intensely with the complex facilities business, and of course, those 2 businesses work together as well. So I see us as that one organisation. You are right, Anthony. I think the uniqueness is that we have, an engineering consultancy working beside an operational business. And when you overlay the data capability that we have, that allows us to get insight into operations, into assets, behaviors, into networks, and allows us then to be able to really go in and make a difference and support our clients. And I think that's the fundamental about AMI and the differentiator for us.
So you're doing a lot more than just designing the structures. You're doing a lot more than just designing the transport solutions. You're actually trying to help these other parts of the business think more strategically, think more long term about how their businesses are growing.
Absolutely. If you take an example that I think brings the business together. You take something like the Core Valley lines down in Wales. We're taking over an aspect of what Network Rail had done in the past. The program management and the planning of that, being able to carry out the designs, being able to bring the trains on, have an influence over the trains, which then allows you to decarbonize the infrastructure. With tri-mode trains. That's the value that we bring. And then just from the stations, how the stations operate, we're able to bring that knowledge from our complex facilities business and our consultants business together. How can those stations operate? How can they become social hubs for towns and villages? So again, it just pulls together the whole business to be able to deliver decarbonised infrastructure that allows social mobility. And I'm proud of what we're doing and what we're achieving down there with our client Transport for Wales.
Well, you've got some pretty ambitious growth targets for consultancy over the next 3 to 5 years, and I suppose it's worth pointing out, of course, that the organic growth of the consulting business, of course, it all started with Sir Owen Williams and Partners when you took over that business, a business, of course, which I cut my own teeth on. And so, maybe I'm part of that transition. I don't know, but I presume that I presume that not all of your future growth is going to be coming organically. You are going to be seeing that growth delivered by acquisitions in future, are you?
Absolutely, Anthony. And I didn't know we were going to take a trip down memory lane to Owen Williams.
It's always an opportunity, Alex, to take a trip down memory lane.
And the old Duchess Place offices and
absolutely, yes.
But on a serious point, yeah, look, the growth for consulting that I see is three main areas. It is that organic growth, doing more of what we do. Secondly, it is moving to new sectors and new geographies, and we have a clear plan, and we're implementing that already. So we've secured our first contracts in the Republic of Ireland. We're back in North America, so pushing with those. And thirdly, it is about mergers and acquisitions. It's about bringing in, bolt-on organizations to the business that allows us to, or supports that journey either geographically or sector-wise as well. So three main strands for me.
Okay. Well, we talked a bit about where you see your key growth sectors and where you're going to be focusing over the next wee while. But do you see any kind of major operational challenges ahead? Is it about finding the right staff? Is it about finding the right skills? Is it about just simply having the capacity to deliver all this ambition?
I think it's an element of all of those, Anthony. It is about, are the opportunities there? And I think now, with the government setting out their missions, I think those opportunities are there. I think globally those opportunities are there as well. So we're able to chase that. We've got the investment now from our new owners. So I'm pleased about that. That's that stable foundation that we can build off now. Resources. A few years ago, we at Amy recognised that, the shortages in skills in the sector as we went forward. So, in consulting, we've developed a Grow Your Own program. So this year we'll see our rail degree apprentices get their degrees, so that's the first cohort we started 5 years ago coming out. And we've got further, degree apprentice courses running, rail engineer, civil engineering, data and analytics, environmental, and we want to build out these apprenticeship courses, degree apprenticeship courses, so that we absolutely provide that skill base for us to go. And how can we contribute to, to the development of these green skills in support of the government's agenda. So absolutely a real push on that.
And of course, the skills that you need are changing. And it's worth, I suppose, spending a few moments talking about your advisory and analytics business, which you touched on about the use of data a bit earlier. But it exists to help clients embrace and exploit their data and digital systems. I mean, how important is that business to you, and how do you see it growing?
It's very important, Anthony. I think it is a true differentiator in being able to take that data, collect that data, and then sit down with both designers and operators and distill that into real insight into, as I said earlier, whether a specific asset or a network, how that's behaving and how we can make changes to that. And that's both from a client perspective, but also for our own internal operations, so it's a vital piece for me. We've worked with complex facilities to look at operating models and being able to, take between 5 and 10% out of operating models. We've been able to go into looking at how operations on the highway network are undertaken, and create efficiencies that have been independently validated at about 60 million savings for our clients. So there's the real impact that can have, across our client base.
But of course, it's not just about designing for lower cost. It's also about designing to reduce carbon and to increase biodiversity. So it's a clear issue on the minds of every client. So how's Amy's design division morphing to meet this new world of supposed changing targets?
Well, look, absolutely. And I think one of the things I'd say is we have quite a green way of thinking already. So in the solutions that we are providing, we're already thinking about that. As an example, in the East Midlands, we took over a project for electrification, and there was a suggestion or a proposal that 6 bridges were going to be knocked down. Well, we've done an assessment of the bridges, and we've been able to notch out so that the OLE cables can run through. Well, think of the Virgin Aggregate, the disruption to local communities, and knocking down those bridges. But we're moving. In the last year, what we've decided to do is move in line with the PAS 2080 and develop that into the business so that we create. And the way I sort of explain it to the business is I want this in our DNA, in our thoughts, and how we can move forward.
And of course, all that is underpinned by a systems approach, which we hear an awful lot about, and we hear it's at top of mind for clients. But what does that systems approach mean for you, and where do you see the opportunities for Amy?
Absolutely. This is a debate that we have been having in Amy for a number of years, that and I think, again, this comes back to us as an organization, understanding data, understanding design, understanding implementation and operations, and how all of those elements fit together. And that's the systems thinking for me. And if I go back to the Core Valley line, it's understanding, the rolling stock that's going to come onto the network. Okay, well, how does the infrastructure need to work with that? So between the initial design and the subsequent design, I think we took an additional 15% of cable, out of the network. Well, what does that mean for the battery power and the charging and the replenishment program? And it's that capability coming together and that thinking that I think is integral to giving those efficient solutions.
Which are arguably, for a business like Amy, in many ways second nature, simply because of the fact that you are involved in the operation and management of a lot of these activities as well. Well, Alex, let's talk a bit about you. You've worked at Amy since 2007 when you ran the Hammersmith Flyover Phase 1 strengthening project, I think, for 5 years, a project that had the potential to disrupt the London Olympics. It was a massive job. I mean, how does that rank in terms of your career highlights?
It's really interesting you pull that one out. I think that is one of the key highlights, Anthony, for me. An unexpected project in the run up to the London Olympics. Some survey work indicated a problem with Hammersmith, and TfL took the decision to close it 3 days before Christmas. 6-7 months before the Olympics. The journey. Well, we were monitoring the structure every 4 hours through Christmas. So I was ringing into the control center, making sure that the structure was safe, that people were safe that were working on it. And then we went into this implementation and fix program. And look, exciting, scary, but my goodness, absolutely rewarding. So we opened a week early. We opened in time for the Queen's Jubilee, and the London Olympic Games and Paralympic Games were able to progress because we fixed that structure. First time we'd used that solution in the UK, and for me, it was a combination of client, ourselves and our supply chain coming together and really being able to demonstrate what we can do as a sector to resolve these infrastructure issues. It's brilliant time for me. Brilliant.
Well, you've been in consulting engineering for quite some time. But before joining Amy, you had a short spell at Transport Technology Consultant MMB Associates. Before that, you worked for 5 years at Michelle. Before that, leading the Bedford office and East Midlands office at Owen Williams, of course. A business that was acquired in 2006 by Amy. I mean, how different would you say the world of engineering consultancy is today compared to, way back in the past, in those days?
Look, in some ways, it's really different. And in other ways, it's not that different at all. It's not different because we still are here to solve complex engineering problems. So that's still the fundamental. I think the tools and the information that we have available to us now and the technology that we have available to us to consider options, to have that more available data in order to be able to refine and get better and better solutions, I think is the thing that has moved on, And when I started as a graduate, to think about taking data from the networks to be able to then input into the designs, you were taking crash data, you were taking traffic volumes, and you weren't taking a lot more than that. But now, what you get is just incredible. So I think it's moved on a lot.
Well, you mentioned when you first started, it was when you were working for East Sussex County Council, I imagine, in 2002, because you studied at Brighton and you still live in Brighton. And I imagine you're probably talking to me right now from the beach, or your beach house in Brighton, probably, I don't know. Anyway, working from a local authority or working for a local authority, I mean, what did that teach you about asset management and local community needs?
So the grounding and the education I had at East Sussex was unbelievable. Some of the people that taught me still work in AME Consulting today. But the grounding, that foundation, that rotation program within the council was phenomenal. And I thank all the team leaders and my supervising civil engineer, for the training they gave me. It probably didn't teach me a lot about asset management at that time, because I think, Anthony, way back then, asset management wasn't really a thing. It was, we were looking after a network. We were trying to provide that social mobility. It probably wasn't called that at the time. But what it did tell me was the impact that you can have on communities. So we did the Bexhill Northern Relief Road, the Hastings Spur Road Phase 2. And I remember the criticism that, you're not from here, you don't understand the problems. And actually having a debate with a local resident about, well, this is the research I've done, this is the problem we're trying to solve, and actually engaging in some dialogue and the success of not turning them around, but bringing them around to the thinking and what we were trying to achieve, and to show them that we weren't there to disrupt their lives, but we were actually there to try to make a difference to their lives. Yeah. I think was something that has stuck with me, through my whole career.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, clearly they were right about the fact that you're not from around there. I mean, because clearly your voice gives it away. You were born and raised in Belfast. I mean, clearly university brought you to Brighton. But what kept you on the mainland? Would you ever return to Belfast?
So I wasn't born in Belfast. I was born in a small town called Cookstown, out in the middle of Northern Ireland in County Tyrone. What brought me to Brighton? Well, it was coming to university over here, and then obviously I stayed for the training program at East Sussex. I have ventured away from the town or the city now a couple of times. I went to the Middle East to gain some experience, and obviously Bedford with Owen Williams. But I love Brighton. It's like a mini London. It's got everything that London has, but on a smaller geographic scale. My wife's family are all around me here. I'm a big family person, so having that sort of replicates what I got in Northern Ireland. I've been away from Northern Ireland for a long time. You can never say never, Anthony, but at the moment there's no plans to go back. I do go back with business, and I have family still over there that I see on a regular basis. But no, not at the minute. Brighton's home.
Well, give us a quick insight to your life in Brighton then, Alex. I mean, you do a lot of cycling. What else do you get up to down there?
So I've got two very sporty children. So my daughter's into tennis and my son's into cricket. So I would love to spend a lot of time watching my daughter play tennis. Unfortunately, she likes to whip her dad, so I spend a lot of time on the other side of the net picking balls up and trying to return serve. But it gets me away and clears out my head. And then I spend a lot of time with my wife ferrying my son around. He's a very good cricketer. And actually he's introduced me to the merits of cricket. So I spend a lot of time doing that, Anthony, so I do as well.
Well, good luck to you with that one. Building on that, of course, you're bringing up the next generation of potential engineering graduates. But, I mean, skills and talent is key to your growth. And you mentioned the apprenticeship program that you're running there. But, what would you say are the challenges for you to overcome? Where are the gaps? Because your business is expanding, your business is getting wider. I presume you're not just looking for people who are interested in civil engineering anymore.
No, absolutely. I think to close this skills gap, it's about it's much broader than engineering, and it's much more than environmental. It's much more than just energy. We have to look at, attitude about how we can develop the programs that will create those green skills. And the apprentice levy is a great step forward, and that really supports our apprenticeship program. What other investment is the government going to bring to help businesses like us to really create these green skills? And we look across the piece from where we can get people, because I think that also brings a diversity of thinking. It brings that different way that allows us to be challenged as engineers into what are the possible solutions. And I quite enjoy that challenge.
Yeah, but that said, training and development of staff, it's an expensive business, Alex. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. If you want to upskill and make sure that your workforce is on top of the subject, you have to invest in it. Is that something which is increasingly a challenge for you, or is it something which you just have to prioritise?
I think it's just something you have to prioritise, Anthony. And we did that a few years ago. In setting up these degree apprentice programmes. Yeah, if you don't invest in these, you're not going to have a sustainable business. So it is just one of those priorities that sits on top of the pile to be able to develop, the resources, the talent, and bringing that through to be able to give you a sustainable business. So, we took the view a few years ago that investment is absolutely necessary, and that investment is built into our strategic plan as we go forward.
All of which is going to really stand you in good stead to help deliver this really bold and ambitious set of priorities that the government set out. And we've spoken about, where you see those opportunities. But one thing which we haven't mentioned is, Amy's got a history and a track record of driving and delivering private investment, whether that's through PFI or PPP projects. I mean, do you expect more of this kind of project to emerge over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think there needs to be, Anthony. I think there is a shortage of money in the economy, and therefore we have to look at different ways that infrastructure and the changes that has to happen to infrastructure has to be funded. And absolutely, I would like to see Amy play a pivotal role in supporting government in that, either initiatives or actually, taking part in that. So yeah, I think absolutely.
Because it's those kind of long-term projects, those long-term partnerships which enable you to build and invest in that workforce which is going to deliver.
Exactly. It gives you that plan, that forward look ahead that allows that investment to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just to finish up, we huge amounts of opportunity. What policies or ideas do you think that you haven't heard coming through from the government at the moment would you like to see that might help Amy's growth going forward?
Well, look, Anthony, I think it's very early days, and I can't fully answer that question until probably we come back after summer recess and we see a little bit more. There's a lot in the King's speech, 40 bills that want to be implemented. We need to see the detail behind that. As a trusted partner to government, we want to support the government in this journey as we go forward. We're trying to engage with the relevant individuals. And we want to be able to influence and really have that discussion around the policies that strengthen the infrastructure sector, I think, for all of us. A policy framework. Let's see that framework around public-private partnerships, how we invest in energy transition, how we invest in technology, and how we invest in the infrastructure itself. Because I think, as I said earlier, I think that investment allows an economy to thrive and progress. So it's sitting down. I think for us, it's understanding more before I could answer that question fully, and say, look, we need this or we need that.
But fundamentally, it comes back to those points again: clarity, consistency, and an understanding of what you're going to be expected to do.
Absolutely.
Alex, great point to end on. Best of luck in developing the business and riding the wave of this new government's ambition. And thanks so much for joining me today on the Infrastructure Podcast.
Not a problem at all. Brilliant to be here, Anthony. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Well, that's all we've got time for today, but we've got more from the Infrastructure Podcast in the pipeline and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background links to all the issues we discussed today and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share with colleagues. So thanks for joining us, and thanks again to Alex, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.